Oh, good morning. I did a Google search, looked for some historical places near my house, and this one was really close. This was just about a couple miles away from my house, so I figured I'd stop by and take a look at it. And here is what I found. So you see, there's a Postle family cemetery. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in there that'll give you some more information about it. It's pretty much the same that's on the marker, but I'll give you a chance to read it. But these are going back to 1810. I believe Ohio became a state in 1803, so these were some of the original settlers in the state. And this was a family cemetery, but as you can see, this is the state that I found it in. So I don't know how much we can really get out of this. We'll wander in there. I went in there yesterday, but fortunately I was wearing shorts and some other stuff, so I didn't really get to move through there. Plus, I did some other videos yesterday that gave me a little better context of how we can look at these cemeteries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move in here, and right away, over here to the right, I'm sorry, my left, you can see here's an elaborate stone. And you can see died the 1870s. You can see it right there. But look at the ornate handwork, that hand right there. And this is a very elaborate stone. You can see the base for it. So my guess is probably one of the later stones in here. But the problem is I'm not really seeing a lot of these standing up above it. I'm seeing a lot of stones laying on the ground like this one. I do believe that says 1832. So there's a stone that's literally almost buried in the ground. But clearly there's some writing on it. Clearly it's an individual. And just kind of walking through the middle here. Okay, here's a bunch of stones. But again, let's see if you can see that. This is okay. Definitely have a died date here. Again, it's actually oriented this way, so you can see the died. And fortunately, this is cracked right down here where it's showing the date. So, but it definitely looks like a very old stone. These look more like bases. They actually look like stones. The bases for the actual gravestones, not the stones themselves. But boy, it does not look like the family at some point must have died out and stopped taking care of the cemetery. This kind of reminds me of my mom's back in Pennsylvania. They had cemeteries like this on the farm, also up in the hills, where family, it's where you get buried. Oh, okay, there we go. So again, oriented wrong. So you can see the died part right here. Again, I'm gonna say that's a 5. It's what it feels like right there. Again, this stone, who knows where the rest of it is. So yeah, this is definitely, this could use some work. I could clean up all of this undergrowth, start to look at the stones, start to maybe try to piece this all back together again, because it is definitely, look, there's just a piece of a stone. So oh wow, okay. Here we go. Okay, so now that I'm kind of looking at this, you see this dirt spot right here, and then you can see the stone over here. So the thing, it's almost better as I look at this now, that the stones fall over on their face, and they lay face down, because you can see here, this stone's been laying face down, so it's protected a lot of this face. And we can see here, last name Porter, died November 16th, 1852, aged 2 years, 2 months, 10 days. May the hands of loose infant souls. It's probably some passage from the Bible about God taking care of children that they had etched on the bottom of that. But I'm almost sorry this was flipped over. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to flip it back over and disturb it. But from what I can see here, it was being better preserved, flipped over on its face, because this part was protected from the elements. So we won't lose that facing, where as I see other ones over here, like the ones I showed earlier that died, they've fallen face up. So it's slowly, whoa, what is this? This is kind of an odd spot, because this is actually depressed. This is actually sinking. That could be a grave collapsing underneath there. I don't know what they buried their individuals in. I don't know if they used coffins. I don't know if they used vaults. Probably just coffins, I would say. Oh wow, okay. Okay. So, this one looks like this is a marker that was put here much later, possibly by, okay, so, what I can see here is there's these big stone plates, these big stone areas, and I wonder if these were vaults from the original burials, because I mean you can see here in the Postles from the sign, these are the original ones, and look at their birth dates. I mean, they're born 1750s, and they came in 1800 from Sussex County, Delaware. So wow, they came from the East Coast to settle here in central Ohio. They were literally on the edge of civilization at that time. They came out to the edge of the frontier. So, okay, so this probably was the original corner of the graveyard of their cemetery, and then they probably worked their way back that way as they progressed with their burials. Or I wonder if they segmented this. This would kind of be up to the family, but they could have segmented it by their actual familial groups. And what I mean by that is, parents would be buried with parents, their children would be buried there with their families. So you would get kind of a family tree grouping within the cemetery, basically, that might not follow just a linear line. They might group them together as think of it as a burial ritual, that they want to keep husbands and wives together. They want to keep children with their parents and parents with their children. So again, see, here's a good example of one that has fallen face up, and you can see the weathering on this. I mean, you can barely make it out. Here's a name up here, and then down here something else, but you can't really make out anything on it. So it is almost better if the gravestones fall forward, as it will. Now, I'm curious because over there we saw a bare spot, and then we saw a gravestone flipped over, and we saw something pretty interesting on it. So I'm just curious, that bare spot, there isn't a stone around here somewhere that somebody flipped over to look at. This is pretty uneven over here. So again, back then they didn't use vaults. Probably just used, elaborate wooden coffins, which over time the earth will crush and flatten. And what that does is that upsets the base of the stone, and then the stone stuff topples over. So this part right here, I can't see any stones in it. So I'm just going to do a quick tour through here. Just see if there's any these things are missing. I don't really see any. And this is really overgrown. There's this one over here. And this is Enzo Porter. Died 1852. Oh wow. Okay, he was 31 years, 2 months. So there's an example of one that fell over backwards, and is laying face up in it. It still has the detail on it. I mean, you can still see it, but yeah, hopefully they'll come in and they'll clean up a lot of this undergrowth, so they can at least see how these things have been laid out, how the graves have been laid out. But we're going to keep in mind here, this wasn't just the family that was in there. I'd read that there was a freed slave that was buried in here that lived with the family. A lot of history in the family. It goes all the way back to, there was a veteran of the War of 1812 in the family that was buried here. And it looks like some type of marker, like base. So it does look like at some point they did try to come in here and kind of I don't know, take care of it, I guess. Best they could, but maybe by the time they got in here, a lot of this stuff had already fallen apart. Considering this is kind of on the edge of the city, I can see, people getting into here. There's nothing really stopping them from walking into this. I'm just glad that people generally respect cemeteries. Don't do things like take the stones home and use them to make like landscaping or something like that. So anyway, this is the Postle family cemetery. I just want to do here's one. Well, that one's really that's deep in there. Yeah, I can't make out a lot of that. Walk the fence over there. I just want to quickly make sure I touch everything over here as well. I'm not missing anything. Okay, and then we did see the child's marker. So okay, that's it. We've pretty much done a walk around of the whole place. Again, I'll put links in the description that will, if you want to do a little bit more research on the cemetery or the family, have the links in there for you. But it's kind of a shame. I wish they would have. I wish some historical society or something would come in here and work to clean this up, get it taken care of. And it might happen. I mean, what could potentially be causing this is this new build going on over here. Once this is taken care of, you know, there's limited access right now, so possibly once that's done, you know, it'll give groups, you know, more access to this place. They could go in and maybe take care of a lot. I mean, the first step I see here is taking care of all this overgrowth and getting it down to a manageable mowing area. And then, you know, maybe starting to catalog where the stones have fallen, see if there's anything that could be done to, you know, put them back in their original, you know, or document at least how they're laid out, so we can get a better understanding of maybe how the cemetery was originally laid out. You know, it looks like the older section is over in that corner over there, and it looks like it comes in this direction, as this being one of the older graves I've seen over here as you come in. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go over to another cemetery that is actually just about 3 miles that direction. And there are some members of this family that are buried over there. There's one of them I found. But actually that family over there, the Clover family, and this family was from English descent, and the Clover family was from German descent. They kind of shared the same congregation between their lands. So the Clover Cemetery we're going to go to next, that's going to be like this, but much better taken care of. And I'll give you what I think is the reason why that is much better taken care of than this cemetery. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.